Meeting for the town of Cape Creek to order. I guess we'll do the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag, United States of America, to the republic which stands, one nation, God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay.
This is a workshop, so I'm not sure if we're going to have any public speakers from the public here today. So I don't know if I'm going to go through my normal speech. I think we can cut right to the zoning administrator's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Since the last meeting, I have some updates for the Chair, Commission, and public. Harold's is hosting the 40th anniversary of the Townsend Corporation on Saturday, June 27th. Planning commissioners were invited. Please RSVP if you have not yet done so. You would have received a preliminary or an email from the town. I know a lot of feedback I heard was that it may have gone to the junk or spam folder, so check those. I sent an additional email separately with that same link. Would love to see you guys there. The town council approved a lease contract extension with the Turquoise Circuit Pro Rodeo for Cave Creek to host the Turquoise Circuit Finals Rodeo occurring in November. It was a 5-year extension, so that puts Turquoise Circuit, their home in Cave Creek, out to 2030. Staff is nearing completion of renovating the public restrooms located at Desert Awareness Park. Council approved and authorized that budget last year, and we're wrapping that project up hopefully here early next week. Council approved the fiscal year 2027 budget at their meeting that they held on Tuesday. I don't recall if my budget was reduced again this year or not, but we'll figure it out. As far as the Arizona State Land Department open space acquisition efforts, those are proceeding. Staff, with the professional consulting assistance of RJ Carden, are engaged with Logan Simpson to prepare cultural resource, wildlife, and native plant analysis, as well as environmental study reports. Additionally, staff is also engaged with Everett Allen Group to prepare Alta survey, as well as Pioneer Title for the title report work. The town is nearing completion on its submittal for the Land and Water Conservation Fund grant to match town funding up to $2 million. It's a dollar for dollar match that this grant. So if the town provides 2 million, this grant will provide 2 million. The application to initiate auction of the 4,000 acres was submitted in April and is progressing through the state land department review currently. Last, I'll just touch on a couple of development projects in town. There are currently several development projects at various stages of review or construction. API, their corporate office building, which is right here across from Town Hall, the former Leland's Jazz Club building, is moving forward. I see change in that nearly every week. Javelina Crossing, the northeast corner of Carriage and Cave Creek, are 2 buildings, office retail. I believe that is in staff review administrative for the site plan. Black Mountain Vista, 7 live work units. Those were approved by site plan via commission and council, were they not? One was. So they're just doing the same thing for the rest of that frontage along Cave Creek Road. And if you drive by, that's the equipment you see on the west side of Cave Creek Road, south of Town Hall here. That's that project. Another project, Vickers Retail Center, that's located behind Starbucks. That was entitled quite a while ago. Their site plan's approved. We are just awaiting a building permit submittal on that. Cave Creek Hotel, which is behind the post office, 114 rooms. That site plan is approved. We are awaiting corrections from their first permit application review submittal. So I know that they are anticipating breaking ground in the fall on that. Black Mountain Marketplace, which is the southeast corner of Carefree Highway and Cave Creek Road, affectionately known as the Bullington property. That is progressed to, I believe they have plans in for their native plant inventory and salvage. They are completing their infrastructure improvement plans, and we should start to see that come together over the next couple of months. And then the last project of note, Cave Creek Gateway. Again, I believe that may have been the last site plan that was brought before the commission, which is the Aldi property. So at 51st Street and Carefree Highway, which is a multi-pad retail center. As far as upcoming business, September 17th, the Planning Commission will be considering various zone change requests and general plan amendments for properties owned by the town of Cave Creek, as well as the Desert Foothills Land Trust. Those, I believe we've briefed commission on this before. The town owns several properties, has been gifted several properties over the time. And then Desert Foothills Land Trust also owns several properties that the underlying zoning is still residential. So we're looking to clean that up on our zoning map and reflect them as appropriately zoned properties. So if any commissioners have specific questions about this report or would like more detail on the matter, I'm available to discuss or meet with you in person, except between July 2nd and July 20th. I will be out of the country, in which my esteemed colleagues, Mr. Baker and Mr. Perales, would be more than happy to chat about anything going on in town while I'm gone. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Happy to be here.
Happy to hear the report and that we won't be hearing the site plans. Okay, with that, I think today we have the continuance workshop on the two items, one the hillside and one the accessory dwelling units in R18, R35. I know Commissioner Lamar, I don't think you were here for the first, were you? Okay. Okay. So, so in any event, we are missing three, which, as I recall, our intent was to ensure that everybody was here for this one. But, I don't know whether anybody's given any thought to that, or if you have anything you want to add, or just leave it to us, or how you'd like to work this.
Share it's solely up to you. I have a presentation. It's going to be repetitive of what we've already
What we
gone
did.
through.
Yeah.
It's up to you if you want that or if you just want to get right to discussion.
Yeah, I don't know. Do you need to see anything from that anymore, anybody?
This doesn't have to pull it up if we're talking about it.
I guess we can have it available for,
I think one thing that may help. I understand I missed the last two meetings, but I think because we are still kind of working through these different concepts and different text amendments, I know that it might be helpful to all the commission, since the entire commission isn't complemented today, to prepare kind of what we've addressed, what concerns were, staff responses to those concerns, maybe formally in a memo type format, and route those to all the planning commission. And then kind of set a time to actually meet and conduct the public hearing on them, and make a recommendation at that point. So kind of now would be the opportunity for the commissioners that are present to say, here's our concern still with these two items.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the things that I kind of was also hoping is, like, depending on what, the consensus of all this, because my understanding was, there's some residents that had contacted or issues that are routinely run into, whether it be hillside or somebody that owns a property in R18 or R35 that's, told staff that they want an ADU. And that's the genesis of why this is being proposed, right?
Mhm.
And what I wasn't sure is that, no matter what, staff is proceeding with this, and so if the feedback from the commission was just like, we hate this, it's still going to be on the agenda for a vote and a recommendation in September, not withdrawn.
Yes. So one of the I don't know if there's any hard and fast rule that says an application can't be withdrawn. I think one of the things, and again, a lot of these text amendments that are being forwarded and proposed to the Planning Commission at this time are born out of not only the anecdotal evidence of people wanting to be able to do this or do that, but also additional, state legislation as the state kind of usurps more and more authority from local municipal control.
Not our size.
Not our size yet, but things
Yeah.
have a way of growing into something unintended or otherwise. And also, really from the workshops that the commission and council have had the last couple of years in looking at things. So really, more than anything, it's more of a mandate of are we looking at our ordinances regularly? I would argue yes.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean,
but
I've been
the
arguing
proof.
for 300 feet for sewer forever, but that doesn't seem to get tabled.
So yeah, town code, our utilities department would definitely need to be the one taking up that torch. Um, but it's also the proof is, yeah, we are having these discussions. We are bringing, text amendments before you. We are having dialogue, and ultimately we're bringing a recommendation forward. My understanding is the landscape and undisturbed recommendation was a split vote. It wasn't, there wasn't a prevailing side with,
Yeah.
a great, vote. It was split 3-2. So
Yeah.
those are the things, I mean, good, bad, or indifferent, that at least shows not only the council, but the public that we are looking at these things and things can be modified over time. Things aren't set in stone. We can look at these. So it's really the proof of town staff initiated an application. Town staff, through its review of our current existing ordinances,
I get it.
in looking at others, what's kind of best practices. Here you go. Here's your bevy of options. You don't have to do it and recommend approval of exactly what staff proposes. You can amend, but ultimately a recommendation is made.
Okay. Got it. So, you want to start with the hillside or? Okay, I guess we can start with the hillside. So my recollection is that a lot of the issues were coming in for this change related to the DR 190 properties. That's correct, right?
Well, Chairman, the concerns are based off of the the disturbance for DR 190, but we're not changing anything with disturbance. What we're trying to do is just get more clarity by changing the language of and not necessarily change the language, just making it more clear for for the public. So when they read it, it's not something that has to be interpreted or something that seems vague or contradictive. So it's just more of cleaning up the language, and
So it doesn't change anything.
it's not going to change anything. At first, it was recommended like maybe possibly give a little bit more leeway for the DR 190s and just letting them disturb all 15%. But after the feedback from commission, we decided to axe that idea. And now all we're doing is just cleaning up language within the hillside ordinance. So that's been
Okay,
completely
so
added.
do we have that to see it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was that in the last packet?
It was, but then it
Okay.
was pulled. So it was in the last packet. And
The May one?
I thought you would have been there.
We skipped.
Yeah, I mean, if you put it up on the screen. I
Yeah,
can see it.
so really the direction and the feedback we got was, let's not touch the bulk regulations. Let's leave the bulk regulations be. But there is two things in that ordinance, and I don't have it in front of me, just from my general knowledge. Is there's a statement in one section of that ordinance that says a hillside property is this, and there's a statement in another part of that same ordinance a couple of pages later that says a hillside property is this, and the two don't necessarily agree with one another. So that's really the impetus for, let's clean up this language, so when someone
Right.
says, well, nah, it says
Yeah.
right here,
Yeah.
we're not having that
I mean, that's a
conversation.
great thing. I had no idea. I'd love, I mean, I can see it over there, but
You
some
can't see it
reason
on your screens.
Yeah,
or
on our
like that.
screen, there's like a Zoom, my notes thing. Yeah.
Hmm.
But it's not touchscreen, so I can't.
Let me see if Brian can come over. So like a share screen, maybe?
Well, it's bringing it up. I can see it behind
Yeah,
because,
is it up now for you guys?
well,
It's there,
I mean,
just with
it,
a
it,
large zoom window.
like we see 1/4.
Oh,
Yeah,
You can't drag it.
no,
No.
it's if it was a touchscreen for sure.
I mean, I guess we could.
Yeah, I mean, I can sort of see it.
Start hitting X's.
Yeah, so that's what we see. Yeah. So if you can X out that Zoom notes. No.
The Zoom notes.
Yeah, like you had the screen up that we saw, but then you X'd out the
Whoa.
whole thing.
They hit the X up here?
No, 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 I'm talking to Eric.
no.
It
You,
popped
you
up. I know.
did.
Is it, do you have it share screen?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Is it the webinar right there?
Try clicking the browser. Little. Yeah, that thing.
Brian, yeah, there he is. Hello, we are trying to get something to project on the screens at the dais, please.
So we all have this Zoom. Ah,
Here we go.
yes. Yeah, no.
Hey, Brian, take the rest of the week off, man.
I mean, it's pretty big on our
Yeah,
screen.
we're full screen here. Oh, that's good.
Oh, good now.
Yeah, we're set.
Yeah, we're good.
Thank you, Brian.
Yep.
Alrighty. So just going over the text amendments in regards to why we're looking to update the language or make it more clear is just that we received inquiries in the past to further elaborate sections, so meaning of the Chapter 7 Hillside Ordinance, so people would call and just read it to us and what does that necessarily mean? So it's more of trying to elaborate further in different language. So we've had that inquiries on the Hillside Ordinance a little bit too often to where we now that we have the opportunity to kind of clean it up and actually put the language in that we're relaying to the public, it just makes the most sense at this moment. Another one we get is how do you calculate the hillside lots to actually determine that there's a natural 15% slope or greater. The way that the calculation is in currently the ordinance, it really just goes and explains how to do the measurements, but it doesn't tell you where to take the measurements from. It's more something that we're, I wouldn't say interpreting, it's just more of the practice that's been done throughout the years, and but it's never been implemented in the ordinance. So another item is just implementing one new item, which would be to allow for driveways to go into hillside areas as long as the development is occurring in a flat surface area that is less than 50% slope or greater, and not force the property to adhere to the 15 or to the hillside ordinance because it'd be unfair that if the surrounding area is all 15% slope or greater and all they're trying to do is just cut a driveway in to build on the flat surface area. It's kind of out of their control on that one. So that's one thing we're trying to implement on that. Currently, there is a determination that we have, which is allowed per the ordinance to allow for determinations and utilize that for certain situations. But now we're just trying to implement that determination into the ordinance to make it so it's accessible to the public instead of having to pull it out and say, well, you can use this. So I'll go into the proposed amendments. The current language states all portions of a lot or parcel having a natural undisturbed slope of 50% or greater shall be subject to regulations set forth in this chapter. So this gets a little bit tricky because the the way people have been interpreting it is that if you disturb a natural undisturbed slope of 50% or greater, then all portions of a lot have to adhere to that, or it's just then it's pretty much saying that your entire lot is hillside when that's not necessarily the case. And What we're trying to amend it to is a lot or parcel shall adhere to the regulations set forth in this chapter when a natural undisturbed slope of 50% or greater is disturbed. So it doesn't say in the current language, when does that have, when does that take effect? And that's where we just put in the link or the one verbiage at the end is disturbed. So that's where questions come into play is, well, if I give you a topographic and show that one area is 50% slope or greater, then the whole lot's hillside. And that's not the case. We have to make it clear that it's when you disturb an area that is hillside or 15% slope or greater,
Any part of the lot.
then yes, then your entire lot would be hillside. So,
And again, we've addressed these through policy, but as staff changes, if, you know, if I'm no longer here,
Yeah.
those kinds of things, then if you read that and take that at face value, if you've got a small, insignificant portion of land that you're not even planning on touching, that's 15%, technically per the written word of that, you can assume that the entire lot is subject to the 15%. And our policy has always been, if you touch it, then yes. But if you stay away from those sensitive areas of 15%, then no. And that's why, you know, going back to the driveway and making that official and codifying it in our ordinance, it's something that we did through determination about 5 years ago. We had a property that the only way to get on the property was to traverse a hillside section. They had no intention of building on the hillside. They couldn't have. It was in the setbacks anyway, but they would have been unable to build on the flat, you know, 3 acre portion of the property otherwise. So we had to, okay, you're just putting in a driveway. You're not doing anything else to that. You have to be able to physically access your property. We're not going to hold that against you and penalize you just to make access. So go ahead.
is there a question on the language here, or why it's changed, or is there further clarification needed on that?
Nope.
No? Okay.
But it sounds like the drive for purposes of this change, you know, the driveway is excluded.
Correct, and
Right.
correct, Chairman, that'll be shown in a later
Regardless
slide.
of length.
Right.
Correct.
You know, because, you know, we have a 5 acre piece and the flat portion is like 600 feet back. We could have a 600 foot.
That is a potential,
Okay.
right? So yeah, there's that new item C that talks about the driveway.
I was just looking to see if that is still subject to town staff review, and we could put that in there, that it could still be subject to town staff review if that would apply, rather than just, you
You're saying
know,
if it was something really
correct, like if it's
Egregious.
going to scar.
normal, yeah.
Mhm. Correct. So I mean, if we need to add something, so it still meets the intent of the hillside ordinance to state that subject to zoning administrator approval or subject to town approval, then we can also do that. That's something that I would probably want to discuss further with legal to see if we'd even have that right to do such, just to say, well, we let someone have it. Maybe we put a cap on the.
I mean, you'd have to probably put a, you know, not exceeding X in length absent zoning administrator approval.
Yeah.
Or some-
We could look
Yeah.
into
I
amending.
mean, I was just throwing it out there because I was like thinking to myself, like, that would suck.
No,
You saw this like,
that's the purpose of the workshop, to get
Yeah.
further, you know, guidance in that. So we can put a couple options together and state, you know, put out maybe a percentage of disturbance, or maybe put it towards a percentage of the square footage or linear footage. So whatever seems more reasonable. I know that there's a subdivision out here that allows for 1,800 square foot of driveways outside the building setbacks for additional disturbance, but it's just something we'd have to look into, and I think probably placing the disturbance cap on it would probably be the best, but
I think the property that exists in town where a driveway would exceed 300 feet in length just to get to a buildable area on a hillside property, that would be a hard one to find.
I know the only one I was thinking in my head is the guy that like did it without a permit.
oh, the
Or something.
great,
There was like an
The Great Wall of
abandoned
Cave
pool.
Creek.
Yeah,
across someone else's property.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, I
Yes.
All
recall
you saw
that.
was like this road ripped.
We're in your neighborhood.
Yeah.
Oh, the road to China?
Yes. So yeah, I mean, to consider all possible potential, that would be an interesting equation to, but yeah, I think there are some guardrails that we can put into this a little bit. I know, there's going to be things with driveway construction. I mean, even with our technical design guidelines for driveways, over a slope of 12%, there's a whole bunch of requirements that kick in. So a lot of those things come into play and are factors as well. So we'll look at all of those and make sure the language that
Let's make
you
him,
get
let's
that you
like,
see,
let's make him solar reflective.
right?
Well,
Only in North Carolina now.
I think you're getting to my question, like, what are the differences, if you are on hillside for site walls and things like that? What between a flat lot, what are you allowed to have for a site wall, depend or, versus the hillside one? So the driveway traversing the hillside area, do we need to have it comply with hillside regulations for that little portion?
Yeah, so that brings up good points about retaining wall and walls just in general being either stone faced with native looking material or stuccoed and finished to reflect the native surroundings. All of those factors come into account. Um, again, our determination at the time for the specific case that we got was for a 25-foot length, they had to traverse a hillside,
Yeah.
slope wise. So yeah, it really didn't take into account what the larger picture of a 200 linear foot driveway or greater would look like. So we'll talk a little bit more in the shop about what that looks like and make sure
Yeah.
that you guys get the best language.
Yeah, because I think all of this makes, great sense to me for, your building area, if it's on the flat side, just,
Mhm.
being pretty standard. But if those roads can get pretty nasty going up hillsides, so it'd be nice to make sure that they're at least, complying with maybe a little bit more stringent.
And sometimes, I mean, even nasty in the opposite direction. I mean, it it can be nasty for the person putting it in because we want them to work with grade and do switchbacks that are appropriately screened so that you're not just looking up
Yeah.
a straight slope.
Correct. And there's design criteria that have to be met, like Luke was indicating, the walls, if there's retaining walls, have to match natural terrain or be stucco. The driveways have to be asphalt or what's the state there?
Anything over 12%
Yeah,
needs to be
correct.
a all-weather
Concrete or
surface, yeah.
asphalt.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's requirements not just to where it's going to completely scar up the mountain. It's still going to have to blend in with what's currently there. So, but again, I think that maybe capping a disturbance percentage, maybe saying as long as it doesn't exceed 5% of disturbance, then maybe something to that extent. But
Or the portion of the driveway occurring within the setback. If that hillside portion is within the setback and the driveway is traversing it within the setback, then they get
correct.
this credit.
Mhm.
So, and
There's-
once they're in the setback and they're disturbing, come on, man, it's
Yeah,
hillside, right?
Yeah, so the disturbance could probably be accounted for all development towards the driveway outside the building setbacks shall not exceed 5%
Yeah.
of the lot area, something to that extent. So, because once it meets the building setbacks, that's where it's going to be a flat surface anyways. So,
I think we can fine tune this a
oh
little
yeah,
bit.
we
bring it
can,
back.
we can. So we'll make sure we fine tune that area. Then I'll go back here. Any further questions on the driveway? No. Okay. So the second item that we're looking to amend is how to calculate the current uh, to determine if a lot is hillside. The current language states for the purpose of this ordinance, the percentage of a slope of an area of a parcel shall be calculated by dividing the natural vertical rise in feet by an underlying 100-foot horizontal run. And then it says rise in feet over 100 foot equals percentage of slope. So we get a lot of calls on that item right there, asking, well, where are we supposed to take the measurement? Where are we supposed to calculate this? How do we calculate it? They ask if we follow different jurisdictions requirements and such, and we just pretty much been going towards the practice that has been done probably since Luke began 15, 16 years ago.
yeah.
Correct. So now we're just trying to implement that into the ordinance by stating for the purpose of this ordinance, the percentage of a slope of an area within the proposed disturbance limits, development envelope of a parcel shall be calculated by dividing the natural vertical rise in feet by an underlying slope, underlying 100-foot horizontal run, rise in feet over 100 foot equals the percentage of a slope at 20-foot intervals as close to perpendicular to natural grade elevation change as practical. For purpose of plan review, a separate slope exhibit may be required, which depicts the slope through the development envelope. I know that gets a little bit tricky in trying to understand that. So what we've done is ask for a little assistance through a firm to actually draw out
What that looks like.
what it would look like. So I probably should have used a better slide. Can't really zoom in on
Yeah.
that more. Yeah, the dang I tried the best one I could use, but
Went heavy on the heading.
yeah, so if you can I can see a little bit clear on my end, but what the firm did was take where the development envelope is, which was the building setbacks, and take the take the contour, draw a line, and from there get the percentage. And they went additional 20 feet, well, 25 feet in this one, but they're supposed to go 20 feet and continue the same practice as what they've been to determine what the slope is through that run. So in this case, they were not showing any hillside areas. But Luke, you've been kind of mastering this one for the timing. So if you want to further elaborate on it.
Yeah, just real quick. I mean, this has long been the bane of zoning as far as calculating whether or not you are in fact a hillside property and going to be subject to those rules. Um, I dare say the policy that we've looked at in determining it has been a little bit arbitrary in that development envelopes can change. We get a lot of people that try to um, squeeze the limits of disturbance and make it really defined, knowing that on either side out 10 feet would put them over that 15%. So instead of really a civil engineer and zoning staff playing that cat and mouse, just clearly saying through your development envelope, which is your building area, the area within your setbacks, you're going to provide these sections. And you're going to tell us what the slope of those sections are. And that's going to tell us, everybody, whether or not it's hillside.
Yeah, every 25 feet or so.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that's smart.
Because there's some undulation.
Yeah, if
right?
you had a ridge or something, I mean, it totally, yeah.
Yes.
This may sound stupid, but I'm just trying to wrap my head around this, because I'm not as familiar with this stuff, but we have one section that talks about hillside lot disturbances, right? And basically it's saying where the disturbance occurs, where if it's 15%, right? But then we have a separate section that basically dictates a development envelope, regardless of where you're disturbing, if the lot, right?
Mhm.
So you get this certain percentage and you get your built development envelope. So you might be confined based on this envelope where you might not otherwise want to develop on, let's say, a 15% slope of that portion of that parcel.
Mhm.
Does that run into any issues? Because are we forcing them into this 15% by creating this development envelope because we're looking at areas that they're not looking to develop on? So the lot may have lots of 15% slopes, but they're not planning to build on that, right? And so therefore, they're not disturbing a 15% other than maybe a driveway, right, to get to that flat portion.
Mhm.
But then because of this section, there's now this imposed development envelope that might impair what they're trying to do by not developing on the hillside part of the lot.
And
So-
that's where it gets a little bit tricky, Chairman Breckner, is that when someone could draw up a plan and say it's 15% or greater. Another engineer draws up a plan and says, no, I did it this way and it's not 15% slope or greater. That's why we're trying to establish it to where the disturbance limits, meaning, well, the development envelope is disturbance limits. It's not like the setbacks where that's the buildable area. The disturbance limits is any area you plan to clear, grub, grade, establish the pads and such. So you would outline pretty much how Everett Allen did here, the areas of the disturbance. So wherever they drew the lines in, that's where they plan to disturb for the site. It ends at that last line right there.
And let me just jump in here, stay on the slide. So again, in a perfect world, when an architect or, someone designing their home would start to lay out how the site's going to develop, they would essentially start with this plan. A surveyor prepared topographic detail that shows the setbacks, the lot lines, this exercise of delineating slopes through the section of the buildable area. In this case, everything is below 15%, so it's not
Right.
hillside. You may find that the top two lines are above 15%, the bottom three lines are below. So that informs your civil engineer and the home designer. All right, we're going to bring the driveway here to avoid those 15%. We're only going to disturb this. Instead of what we have now is people just dropping disturbance on a lot and then leaving staff and ultimately another civil engineer and surveyor to figure out whether or not it's hillside. This jump starts that process of here's your hillside exhibit. Stay out of this area. You can build in this area instead of having to guess, all right, we're going to disturb this. Oh, wait, that's 14.9%. Or is it 15.2%? Where did they
So,
start and
Under
stop?
this circumstance, they stay out of hillside altogether.
Correct.
So you can have two different owners, one deciding I want to build over here, and then they're subject to the hillside ordinance, and then another owner who's like, no, I'm okay over here, and then they avoid it all.
Right.
Okay.
And that's what this exhibit does.
Okay.
And the way we define it and say, this is how you're going to show it. Instead of, like I said, going back to the show us your limits of disturbance. All right, now drop a 100-foot section across there. What's the natural grade? And trying to chase down whether or not it's hillside that way. This method is much cleaner and gives everybody a level of expectation and comfortability on whether it is in fact hillside or not, or certain portions are or not.
Right.
Would you provide this exhibit or something drawn up similar like that within the guidelines?
Absolutely.
Yes, this would be implemented in the ordinance.
Yeah.
Of course, this was just for example purposes, but we'd consult with the firm probably to draw us an official exhibit to
Put it in the
officially.
ordinance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Correct. Mhm.
Another thing I was thinking on that driveway, just if you're making exhibits like that, is to where do you delineate the driveway versus auto court? Like, where does it stop from being your driveway's, connection to now I'm at the garage or whatever and disturbing more?
Correct. Where does the driveway end to where now it's
'Cause
into.
I know I fudged that a little bit, like it's.
No,
So you
yeah.
might want to delineate that.
Sure. And it'd be where, I mean, just for the layperson, it'd be if you put your car in park and got out of it and left, could someone still get by you? That would be the
Yeah.
end of your driveway and the beginning of your parking area or motor court.
Yeah, that's fair.
I think it would probably end once it hits the requirements for the town engineer of the width, and then once it expands out past the 6 minimum requirements.
Above the
So-
requirements.
Correct. So that's something we could look into as well and possibly do, if we need an exhibit, we can do an exhibit for that as well. So there further questions on this item? Is it more of, is it kind of clear what the intent is to, yeah, because again, when we were getting calls, like, how do we calculate this? And many engineers would say this is hillside, and it left the client, the public to have to go and search for another second opinion. So, yeah.
I could see this being much clearer.
So this one, just the minor change is similar to this item here, indicating that when it's actually disturbed is when, and I'll read it, but it's just that cleaning up the language again. So the area of a site containing natural undisturbed slopes of 15% or greater shall be limited in the amount of the maximum permitted disturbance allowed. Those portions of the parcel containing slopes of 15% or greater shall be restricted to a disturbance limit not to exceed permitted maximum indicated within the lot coverage and land disturbance regulations table as contained within this chapter. So what we changed it to, what we're proposing to change it to is when an area of a site containing a natural undisturbed slopes of 15% or greater is disturbed. So it doesn't say that in there. It doesn't say is disturbed. So that's where we're changing it to make it clear that when it is disturbed, then the entire lot or parcel shall be limited in the amount of the maximum permitted disturbance allowed. In allowed indicated within the land disturbance regulations table as contained within this chapter. So all it is really making it clear that when that 50% slope is disturbed, then your entire lot is now considered hillside.
Subject.
The current language doesn't say when it is disturbed. It's something we have to tell
Yeah.
the public, well, when you disturb it, that's when you have to adhere to
But
it.
it's incongruent with that first statement of any lot
Yeah.
of record having 15% or greater is
Yeah.
considered hillside.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll
I mean, it gives them the option depending on the contours of the lot that they own.
work around it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Would you add like minus the driveway or whatever we're figuring out with them?
Yeah, I think maybe except as otherwise
Stated in this
stated in
ordinance.
this ordinance, something like that that ties it to that statement. That C, that item C from earlier would be good.
Depending on the wording of the other section.
Yeah, I mean, just for example, we'll have some engineers that will provide a survey which shows that the lot, 35% of the lot is less than 50% of slope or greater, then the remaining is
Yeah.
all hillside. So it pretty
Yeah.
much it indicates that that's their maximum disturbance if 35%, if they don't want to be hillside. So we have that happen as well.
I mean, you could easily add something at that, another sentence saying, for purposes of this paragraph, a driveway shall not be considered
Right.
disturbance.
Well, if it's disturbance, it's just,
Correct.
Purposes of
it
this.
doesn't kick you.
Count it towards the overall site.
Yeah, yeah,
disturbance
for
of
purpose,
reference.
well, it doesn't kick it into the hillside provisions.
So the current ordinance in other chapters state what Luke had indicated was unless specified otherwise in this ordinance. So that way that will cover us to go and revert to the driveway requirement, say that as long as you fall within this requirement, then you don't
Not
adhere.
treated as disturbance.
Correct. And
Yeah.
that's probably gonna be the safest bet on that. Because if we go and trying to address the driveway, then that may get them a little bit more uh caught into something completely different when the intent is just to clearly focus on that when is the lot considered hillside and when are they subject to adhere to the land disturbance regulations. So
And the goal of an effective ordinance is to give the public something to point to, not necessarily to defend or have to explain.
Yeah.
You know, just make it as straightforward, call it what it is. If you disturb it, it's hillside, you know,
Mhm.
so.
That's why I was kind of suggesting putting it right there as opposed to
Mhm.
referring somebody to another section because then that leads to more.
It's gotta be somewhat confusing.
All right.
are there any further questions on that one or any? Okay. And this is the driveway requirements we went over earlier. Do we need to go over this section again, or is we took the recommendation of trying to find probably capping it at a certain disturbance limitations and trying to clean up the language on that so we can look further into that. But would you like me to go over this section or? There isn't a current section with the driver requirement. All we'd be doing is adding another item, which would be C.
I would from just an English standpoint, I think but might be better than yet.
Yeah, we can.
Yeah,
It just from an English standpoint, it's clear like but the driveway or utility service.
however,
must.
the driveway or public
However,
utility,
but-
yeah.
It should be
Yet seems awkward.
it should be driveway and or
Public
public
utility.
use of service
Yeah.
lines.
Okay, so we'll change it to but or however, and then and or public. And then we'll try to research further what's probably most appropriate of the limitation for disturbance, either capping it at a
Yeah.
percentage or capping it at square footage. So,
Okay.
And that will likely be something, just kind of here, thinking about it out loud. That might be some options that are brought back to you guys. Here's option A that has a cap on where the disturbance can occur. Here's option B that just caps the overall disturbance, that kind of thing. And let you guys kind of discuss and pick which you think suits the ordinance overall the best.
All right. This one's just making it a little bit more simple. This currently states all building permits for sites having natural slope areas of 50% or greater shall be limited in the amount of maximum total disturbance area for those parcels with areas containing slopes of 50% or greater. The permitted total maximum disturbance is indicated in 7.1, which table 7.1 just outlines the maximum disturbance. We just shaved it down. So for the parcels where disturbance occurs within areas containing natural slopes of 50% or greater, the permitted total maximum disturbance is as indicated in table 7.1. It just made more sense just to, I felt like it was repeating a sentence. So I just wanted to make it, to cut it short and just get to the point. Are there any questions on that section?
No.
So this one is being amended because site plans are no longer taken to commission and council. So we're just striking that out to be consistent with the current ordinance. So. And so this one is just amending this section to change it from town council to town staff, because again,
Yeah.
site plans do not
Yeah.
go to commission or council. This one is to be consistent with what our current requirement is. When I first started, the town engineer and I had a discussion, and it was best to, they used to ask for 2-foot contours on the civil grading and drainage plan, but after speaking with the town engineer, it was best determined to keep it with 1-foot contours. So therefore, we're just trying to change this to be consistent with our internal policy. So
I love this one. This one has always been why is it 2 feet? What is that? It's just to make people lose their minds that they've got to go back to a surveyor and have them remove one contour line so.
It's for looks. It looks less severe.
Right, yeah,
Easier on the eyes.
it is.
It's a nice
It's a little
little
less busy.
So that was the hillside section, and really what I gathered from that is just more of clean up the language of driveway, and then getting a final exhibit that will supplement or complement the disturbance and when it's considered
Yeah.
hillside. So other than that, am I missing any other items on that, or?
No, I think
it's all
this
good.
is really good.
Okay.
With
Mr.
that,
Baker?
Chairman, did we need to go over the accessory living quarters?
No, we can skip.
You want to skip that one?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, let's go to that one.
Sure, I'll try to run through this quickly again because we've kind of gone through the presentations. I think what the goal of today was to look for first of all, do we want to proceed with this? Since again, staff is the applicant, we still have
Was
the
there any
ability.
changes made, like the hillside? Because I don't
Yeah, and then
know.
B was really changes to
Okay.
what staff is looking to propose. I don't know if we went over, it was in the staff report that was going to be for May, but it was continued, but it was the looking at potentially the gross floor area.
Yeah.
Modifying that.
Yeah.
And so I'll get through it, but the background on this, we introduced it in March, had a workshop in April, and then prior to that May public hearing, we wanted the workshop today to get a full consensus on what we're looking at doing. So we've already gone over the rationale behind the text amendment, but two more things just wanted to point out is trying to look at the general plan, and two parts came out to us looking at it is, first of all, there's a section that talks about encouraging residents on septic to connect to sewer. Looking at the map of the R18 and R35 properties that I'll get to, I think it's on the next slide, the majority have sewer right there in the vicinity, and existing septic tanks may not have that capacity for a new guest house, which could incentivize a sewer connection. And then the second thing, looking at the general plan, is that there's multiple sections, but I took the snippets from page 20 that talk about the lack of housing that's oriented towards our senior population as well as the workforce housing. And this is a small thing that could definitely help with those types of things for multi-generational living and, again, additional housing options while still preserving the character of those zoning districts. So here's the map of the properties, R18, R35. There's 600 properties, 57 of which are vacant. So we're already at a 90% build out. The ones that still are going to be potentially developed that should be noted are Hidden Canyon behind Town Hall, which would be 48 lots. The lot on the northeast corner of Spur Cross and Grapevine that has a potential build out of 13 lots. And there's another lot on the southeast corner of Schoolhouse and Military, which has a potential build out of 8 lots. And really looking at this map, they're all, if you look, pretty much the majority are in that town core area. So we've gone through this slide, I know before, but looking at the existing requirements for our desert rule zones of accessory living quarters, the maximum gross floor area can't exceed 50% of the principal residence. So if that principal residence has a 3,000 square foot gross floor area, that accessory living quarters could not exceed 1,500 square feet. They're also required to be shared by the same driveway as the primary residence and share the single common water and electric meters. And like any structure, an accessory living quarters would be required to meet the setbacks, which for R35, that's 40 feet front and rear, 20 feet sides, R18, that's 30 feet front and rear, 10 feet on the sides, except if it's a corner lot, the side setback facing the street would be 20 feet. And there's also another thing to keep in mind, which is lot coverage, which is the roof outline of all covered structures. For R35, that's 20%, R18, 25%. And then looking at the nearby municipalities, first of all, we talked about this a little bit earlier, but House Bill 2720 was passed, and that required municipalities of 75,000 or larger to require by law a minimum of 1 accessory dwelling units on all single-family residences. I think the thing to note with that, it's not totally an apples to apples comparison because the lot sizes that those are really looking at are the 6,000 to 8,000 square foot lots that you see throughout the valley. R18 and R35 for Cave Creek standards, they're small lots, but when you think about other municipalities, that these are their estate lots. So it's tricky to really do a comparison. But when we looked at the other ones that do have R18 and R35 zoning districts, if you go down the list, Apache Junction, Carefree, Fountain Hills, Paradise Valley, Wickenburg, they all do allow accessory living quarters in their comparable R18 and R35 zoning districts. And then looking at their zoning codes, they also tend to have that same requirement of the shared water and electric meter, as well as the shared driveway. Where they do vary is with the gross floor area ratio comparison, which again, that's that size ratio with the primary dwelling unit. So I put this little table together. Our desert rule zones are 50%, which is towards the top end if you look at other municipalities for that size ratio. Whereas you look at Carefree, Fountain Hills, they're lower, down by 33% and 30%. The state law that was passed has an interesting one of 75% or 1,000 square feet, whichever is less. Again, that one's not a great comparison because again, you're talking about smaller lots and your typical cookie cutter subdivision tract homes.
Yeah, I mean, those municipalities are 15 times the population size.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, there's differences, as Eric pointed out. They're not apples to apples. Did you find anything with reduced setbacks for accessory living quarters as far as single residence, or do they follow the kind of the detached accessory structure setbacks? You know, like county allows accessory structures up to 5 feet.
So it's the large municipalities, again, all have that they're going to be 5-foot setbacks for accessory living quarters. I actually think that was in that House Bill 2720. The smaller, like Carefree, is similar to us, where it's just 1 building setback. But some of the other ones, like Scottsdale, have the reduced setback for accessory living quarters, where they can be down to 5 to 10 feet, usually in that range. So we're unique with some of the other smaller municipalities where we just have that 1 solid building setback that applies to all structures, really to try to keep structures off the property line to try to maintain that low density character of those zoning districts. And so that's kind of what I was going to get into with this slide is the setbacks coverage. We have disturbance, which is pretty unique, and other development considerations will inherently limit the location, size, and honestly the feasibility of these accessory living quarters on many of the lots. Second, that R18 and R35 properties are allowed to build detached accessory buildings as long as they do not meet the requirements of a living quarters. So today, someone in an R18 zoning district could build a detached structure. It could be conditioned. It could have a full bathroom. Let's say it just could not have cooking facilities and a bedroom. So you're still allowed currently to build detached structures. They just cannot have that full combination, which we define as an accessory living quarters. And then the third point is just that even though they're going to be permissible in R18 and R35 zoning districts, the expected number should be less than what's allowed in desert rule zones due to the tighter development constraints. And then when you look at the desert rule zones, the majority of those properties today do not have an accessory living quarters. So with all of that being said, there were two options that staff was going to propose, which are, first of all, option A, which would be to have the same requirements in R18 and R35 that desert rule zones have, which is the single common driveway, shared water and electric meter, and then the 50% gross floor area requirement. Then the option B was everything I just said, except make the gross floor area 30% in these zoning districts instead of 50%. And then this was just a comparison of those two. So if you look at a 2,000 square foot primary residence, you would see that the 50% requirement would make the accessory living quarters maximum size 1,000 square feet. If it was 30%, it would make it 600 square feet. And then again, at the bottom, you just also will have to factor in lot coverage because there's also going to be a hard cap. No matter what, you can't exceed a certain number of all coverage structures, which that's important to note too, because it would apply to more than just the primary residence and the accessory living quarters. It would also be carport, sheds, or ramadas or other coverage structures on a property. So that was kind of the rundown on that. There were two different things we're looking at. And if there's, I should back up. There's one thing we're looking at changing or playing with if we go down allowing accessory living quarters in R18, R35. Staff thinks it would be the gross floor area, looking at that as a thing.
Yeah, I mean, that. Actually, I want to.
No, I'm done.
Over the time, I was ruminating in my head. That was what was kind of coming in my head too. And if you go back to the first slide that you had, here, where 90% is built out, right? Septic tanks are going to be an obstacle. And septic tanks often are obstacles because of the fixture count, right? And if there's gross floor limitations, that gives them a better shot at having it, because given the cost of having to connect, that's going to dissuade these. And then they just won't do it because they're like, my septic's fine and it's going to cost me 80 grand to tie in, to the sewer, because my fixture count, if I have 2 bedrooms or 3 bedrooms or, a larger ADU, it gives them at least a little bit better of a chance for the fixture count not to go over if they're not having 2 bathrooms and, all that kind of stuff, because their main house is X and then they're allowed a larger ADU. And then also for purposes, if we go back to that first slide again, the bottom point that was being made, multi-generational living, it's typically going to be a 1 bedroom. It's not going to be, family, if it's your mom or dad who can't care for them. So, so in my mind, I like the 30%, and in my head, I was thinking not to exceed, maybe the minimum, the middle ground that you had on there, 750 square feet, something like that. And that way it's kept to like a 1 bedroom, or if it's 2, it's tight, but the idea is to keep it to something not so massive, because in my head, yeah, it's all built out, but we do have that one part. I mean, I hate to go back to that one parcel next to me, but that's an important parcel. And somehow, even though we're rural, R35, you can disturb and build more in R35 than DR43. And then you've got this sandwich, you get 7,000 feet that you can disturb, and it's less than DR43. And so you end up with this potential for massive structures there filling up a lot of the lot. And so my thought was, some sort of middle ground by putting in a floor area maximum. I think we saw it in one other zone, one other area or municipality, maybe it was Wickenburg or
Uh,
I don't remember where it was.
Yeah,
there's-
right.
Yeah, Wickenburg.
There's one thing about that though, like at least from appearances from the outside, I think the biggest thing on here that I look at is I can build a detached garage, max out everything,
Yeah.
build it to the
Today,
everything.
Yeah.
And so from all appearances of density, people driving by looking at houses and how, our rural area
I mean, there's things we can't control.
doesn't change at
There's
all. It's
things
just,
we can't.
it's just like, do you want more people in the town or not? I feel like that's more what you end up with.
With
You're either providing more housing, like for well, I guess we're leaving it open to whatever. It could be an Airbnb or it could be your mom,
right.
versus a garage. I'm just,
Yeah. So like
uh,
that's where I'm trying to
but
find the happy
I
medium.
guess what I'm getting at, does it matter if the building is smaller when I can build a garage just as big?
Yeah. She
Just
doesn't need,
don't know.
she doesn't need to cook.
so anecdotally, if I may, just anecdotally, two things come to mind in this conversation that are both entertaining to the musings of my brain. But um, our population of Cave Creek has gone down in the last 20 years, and not just by a little bit. Like our population is dropping. Um, which doesn't compute with the fact that we've added so many dwelling units in the town over the last 20 years. So when you'd said just do we want more people in the town or not? I mean, I think whatever that capacity is a little bit sure, whatever. I mean, we don't really see it, right? We haven't really seen
also
the change.
depends on-
We've noticed the decline, but
Yeah.
and then the other thing, Commissioner Lamar will remember this when we were going through the zoning ordinance back in 2012, and the 4 hour long meeting we had over whether or not to adjust the DR 190 lot coverage, which used to be 5%. It's now 10%, but no one realizes the amount of effort and energy and time going into what does 5% look like. And one of staff's proposals, and I'll take credit being it's cheeky as I was 15 years ago, was why do we have to have a percentage of lot coverage? If everything is required to meet the setbacks, what difference does it make? And if there were banana peels to be thrown at somebody from you guys, that it would have been the time to do that because that was kind of dismissed out of hand. But that illustrates the point that Clayton's making, or Commissioner Vice Chair Miller is making about I can build this now. What really does that mean, whether or not it's livable or not, or what the use is? It's still a structure. And further, as we've discussed and defined what a detached living quarters is, if you wanted to take your house now, put an exterior stair up to a new second story addition that is accessed via outside, the town considers that a detached guest house. So for all intents and purposes, when we talk about land area, you are not only defined by your setbacks, but also the height of a structure. So there are certain circumstances where an existing residence doesn't have the room, the ground room to provide a guest home, but they could go up, but maybe they don't want to access it through the existing space. They want to have an exterior stair that leads up to a guest suite or a guest home as we define it. So all of those things kind of play into this as far as, and back to your point, we can continue to say, no, it's just not allowed. You can't do it. And then we can continue to chase the rabbit of, well, it's not a guest house. It's an art studio and it's my creative space where I've got a Murphy bed. Or we can say, yes, but here are the requirements that you have to meet in order to do it. And do you have to replace your septic? Maybe. Do you have to provide this? Possibly. So instead of an out of hand, no, they're just not allowed. What this is attempting to do is say, yes, within these parameters, it is a permitted use.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Unless somebody had a comment based on what Luke just
Yeah.
said, sorry. Do we have any numbers about how many permits have been submitted for accessory units? And then how many actually been built? And I don't care what timeline, it could be 5, 10 years. Do we have
Just
any-
in the town, how many guest homes are
Yeah,
constructed
like we're talking about here.
in this zone? None, because they're not even submitted. We are saying no, that's not an
You're talking about
appropriate
desert
middle.
rural.
It's not allowed.
Yeah.
Where it is allowed,
Yeah. Overall.
So in desert rural zoning categories, I mean, if you asked me 10 years ago, I'd say maybe 6 to 10 a year.
I was gonna say a dozen
Yeah.
maximum.
Maybe now it's increased a little bit. But obviously the demands of the community, the socioeconomic makeup of the town, we see tons of RV garages, we see several guest houses.
So if we see so few, why are we going down this road?
Because when asked specifically questions that are zoning related about R18 and R35, this is
So that's the group that wants these.
yes. Everyone else can have them. It's whether or not they choose to build it is another thing. But yeah, they are built and they are,
So
in
it's quite
demand for
likely they
various-
want it because they can't have it, but then if they can have it, they won't build it.
That's a potential. But again, it goes back to my point of it's easy to say no, it's not allowed. It's also just as
Yeah.
gracious of a community to say yes, they are permitted. However,
Yeah.
here are the requirements for it.
Yeah, I mean, sounds like if we say yes, as a town, there's a lot of restrictions around this already with setbacks, septic, utilities, driveways already that 100% wouldn't even qualify. What percent would is, different question. Then out of that percent that would qualify, how many would actually go through with it, right? I think it's a pretty small percent.
Well, this goes back to what Chairman Breckner mentioned, Commissioner Edison, that, when you hear you may have to tie in the sewer and abandon your septic and such, and you're going to ask yourself, is it worth 180,000, 100 to 200,000 just to do that project? And then in addition to how much is it going to cost to do the guest home? So that's just it's just more of giving flexibility and the ability for those that actually want to do it, then that by all means, that option is there. But is that something that they're going to want to do in the long run, uh, to what possibly increase property values or such?
Yeah.
We don't know, but are they going to profit off it? And again, it still would be in compliance with the general plan. As far as how would we be able to implement that portion of general plan? Well, this is really one of those options to really get to that point.
I
Juxtaposed with no, it's not allowed.
Yeah. I mean, like, I get it, 90% built out in the R, it's really that 10% that I'm concerned that hasn't gotten built and then they're allowed to do it. And then we get this like, property with just a massive amount of structure on it because they're effectively building 2 homes on 1 lot, and so that's where in my mind, I was like, maybe the compromise somewhere in there for that aspect is for some kind of floor area cap for the ADU percentage, which I think he had outlined in B, which was 30% of the primary residence, but that's still, I would think it's fairly easy to see a 5,000 square foot primary, on a R35 lot, and then a 1,500 square foot guest
Jared-
house, which is bigger than a lot of people's homes.
So yeah, those do exist. Absolutely. I think when I went through an inventory of the properties, over half really fell between the 1,500 square feet and 2,000 square foot range, really just across the street, those R18 properties. There are some that absolutely are that size.
I see that for sure.
I wrote down because I was looking at Wickenburg's too. They have the or option. something like you could do 30% or 1,000 square feet, whichever is less. So that still gives, let's say the house is only 2,000 square feet, they could still do 600 square feet if they wanted. But then when you get to the larger 4,000 square feet size,
Yeah,
it cuts it down at least
Yeah.
a little bit.
yeah.
I would further, I mean, if we are going to go down this road, I would also explicitly exempt maybe covered patio or garage or carport in some manner or capacity. Because if we're talking about strictly gross floor area, then yeah, you wouldn't be able to do a single car garage, given those restrictions of square footage. So there should be some flexibility in that, correct?
Are you talking about?
Are
Because
we talking about livable or are
You're
we,
talking about a garage for the ADU?
correct?
so that would count towards the gross floor area because it's attached. So you're saying to exempt those even if they're attached, but
Almost make it livable and um I don't know. That just my 2 cents. Obviously, it's not my call, but it's something to consider because a 3-car garage is what, 900 square feet. So um a 1-car garage would be 300 square feet and a bedroom would be
But you're talking
400.
livable. You're wanting to say, have the 30% and the square footage be livable.
Well, so this is based off a GFA model, and GFA is everything under a roof is part of that
Right,
calculation.
right. I'm saying what you're articulating is for it to be livable.
Right.
well, it's
Not-
It's something to discuss.
it's
Yeah.
a little nuanced because gross floor area is within the walled space. So we get this at the counter all the time where someone says, "Oh, my house is 3,000 square feet. My lot coverage is 3,000 square feet." It's never that because
Yeah.
lot coverage, you have covered patios, you have a garage, it doesn't count towards square footage. The thing about gross floor area though is that your garage and unconditioned space does count towards gross floor area, but a covered patio would not because it's not enclosed. It's anything that's enclosed attached to the structure. So
So to what Luke's getting at, it's really the garage.
correct. So what we usually advise applicants, sometimes they'll want to do a guest house with even in desert rule zones, a 2-car garage and a little
Yeah.
casita attached to it. Usually it
Luke-
doesn't work.
Luke, they get around it because there's a separate provision that allows them to build a detached garage. Right, so they can easily build a detached garage and doesn't count towards the
Right.
ADU.
And
But to your point, now you're getting 3 structures.
Yeah.
When you're trying to limit
Yeah.
the structure appearance from, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's all. I mean, it's just one more thing to consider. If we are going to further restrict the overall size based on gross floor area, those are the unintended consequences.
I mean,
You go the other route.
And you got to park grandma's car in a garage, otherwise it's going to be worthless in 4 years. So
yeah.
You go the other route and just make it just without carports and garages and just make it just like a mother-in-law quarters.
that's why I was thinking in this case livable, but we are causing then a kind of break from what we do for DR. And then we're probably likely to get on the other side. Well, if you're not counting it in R35, R18, why are you counting it against?
So then
No, I'm saying that like
to make it easier then, so if I was thinking, 30% or 750,000, and that accommodates it. Because now you're adding in some cushion.
Yeah, I think 1,000 or 1,250, no, not to exceed 1,250 for,
I don't care if it's 30% or 1250, the lesser of.
yeah. Is that,
yeah, that
I think
makes
that
sense. too. I'd
checks
have
that
to
box
figure
then.
out what
I mean,
number
they'd
that
have
gets
to
to.
have, they'd have to have a 4,200 square foot
Yeah,
primary.
that's it.
and really probably Black Mountain Shadows would be the good exercise to look at the average.
Yeah, the thing with
They have
that,
they understanding that, but still those houses sprawl 3 out of 4 setbacks. So what are the sizes of those? And is there even, what would that look like?
Majority of them are maxed at their lot coverage
Right. And they're all about,
and their development. If we're trying to put the development envelope aside, then yeah, I mean, they may have room to do a small guest quarters, but
not much.
But again, what I comes down to when I think of just a guest home on smaller lots is just the home itself, the not not the garage, not the carport. I mean, that's just when I think of a guest house, from my experiences in smaller jurisdictions, it's just the house itself, like a mother-in-law quarters. So I don't know if that's something else to consider or not, but is it a good idea? Probably not, but just to keep the character of the R zones, I don't know.
Well, just looking at this map, Black Mountain Shadows, what we were describing, and Desert Creek, they both have really tight development constraints beyond our zoning ordinance, which would make it pretty difficult to put in accessory living quarters. And the other two, Miramonte and Hidden Canyon, now you're dealing with hillside, and that inherently you're not going to be able to put a ton on those properties. So that's kind of what staff is looking at. Then it's like, okay, what are we left with? It's the pocket up by Spur Cross and Grapevine. It's the pocket across from Town Hall, the R18 pieces, and it's the pockets down by Carefree Highway. So that's kind of what staff
You're
is
saying
really.
Saguaro West?
Saguaro West would be included in that as well, yes.
So what I'm gathering is bringing you the cap option.
Yeah, in conjunction with B.
Yeah. Okay.
And then
Well, I don't know if you need to
loading
go,
in the, well, I mean, this
you
is
don't
just
even need to
me.
do B. You could just do A with the cap.
You're saying 50%?
If you're putting
Or-
a cap on the size of the thing.
A would be
Well, the difference is what I was thinking was having the language from Wickenburg, so it does make a difference if it's 30% or 1,200 because it's the lesser of.
Mhm.
Call it the lesser.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if they got to build 4,200, because if they have a 3,000 square foot house, they're capped at 900.
Right.
You're just worried about the big lots of this.
Yeah, I'm just trying
I don't
to. Hold on.
feel like is there another way to figure out how to I don't know, exclude the big lots and leave it with the large? Because I think I don't know what Luke's getting at. 1,000 square feet, including a garage, is pretty small.
so it
Yeah.
goes back to the lot coverage
Well,
too.
it just depends on what the main structure is, right? Because
I know, but if you're trying to cap it at 1,000,
So-
I'm just trying to not encourage, 7,000 square feet of structure built on a.
Or are you? I mean, I look at it a little bit different. So in the case of the lot that's at Schoolhouse and Grapevine,
Schoolhouse.
Spur
or
Cross.
Spur Crossing Grapevine, I'm sorry.
You would
There-
dissuade subdivision then.
You would
Right.
dissuade smaller lots. You would actually have less. You would have larger, more,
Lot.
acre plus. Instead of subdividing it to its full potential and capacity, you're almost encouraging.
Well, I don't think
Fewer lots.
I don't think ADUs are gonna dictate that.
Well,
If the lot size is 35,000 square feet, you get to your,
I mean, if we're still saying you can have a 1,200 square foot home,
Mhm.
or 30%, I would think that it's encouraging a larger lot. you
Right.
know, by doing that as opposed to smaller lots.
Mhm.
And I think what you're saying is what I'm doing makes for more lots, but I'm thinking it's going to encourage the opposite.
no, it's going to allow more, it would encourage larger lots
Yeah.
because you're getting
Yeah.
a bigger area to be able to space that out appropriately.
Yeah.
Maximize your main residence
100%.
and whatever that cap is on.
I
the
don't think
other
it's
side.
going to, that'll be the result, but it doesn't, in my
Yeah.
mind, it encourages that.
Yeah, every now and then we're wrong.
Yeah. Lately, more often
Right.
for me.
so it sounds like the consensus to bring to the public hearing would be 1,200 square feet or 30%, whichever is less, as the primary option
Yeah,
we're
I
looking
mean,
at.
and it's not just my say here. I mean, you've got an A and a B.
Yeah.
If everybody wants to vote A in, they get to vote A in.
Then what I could just adjust B to add 1,200 square feet, bring both options
Yeah,
and
with the
see what
left
the
or right,
commission.
see. Where the
onto
chips
the deal.
fall.
Is there any sort of exhibit we could do to this to like, I don't know, provide any sort of clarity or show?
Yeah, we've talked
Benefits
about,
of
I had an
something.
exhibit in the April meeting. It was taking a little overhead of a property. It showed a house and it showed the guest house and the setbacks, and really that was trying to show kind of how we look at it. But I mean, we can definitely add that in the next meeting as well.
I guess what I'm trying to get at is like, it seems to me like in your typical lot here, where you're actually really complying to an R18 and an R35 kind of zoning with minus these. It's the outlier ones that we're worried about.
Really the undeveloped,
Yeah.
some of the undeveloped ones. And frankly, my only concern really is that gateway to Spur Cross. That particular
That triangular
property,
piece.
yeah. And it's
Which
just
has its own issues as far as, its
it's
shape and
triangle,
size
but
and
it's flat. There's no hillside.
Sure.
It's no washes. It is like
Mm-hmm.
entirely buildable. It's the gateway in, and you know, it because to your point on the stuff that's built out, yeah, it's built out. It's not necessarily going to be ideal because they situated their home, they are septic, they're whatever.
Yeah, and it would, development wise would look very similar to, um, a mirror of what's across the street. Probably even less impactful than what's currently at the other corner of that same.
What corner are you talking
So if you want to go to the
Yeah,
slide with the overview.
yeah, you're talking about on the west side of Spur
Where
Cross.
Councilman McGuire lives. So just the other side of it, you can see kind of how many parcels laid out in there. And those are all, correct me if I'm wrong, those are all built out, I believe.
All but
You're saying approaching the golf course?
Yeah, just to the
Yeah.
east of the golf course there, heading towards Spur
Yeah.
Cross.
So you
Yeah,
pass the
yeah,
Montessori and go
Yeah.
left.
So that is what R35 development looks like in a meets and bounds subdivided configuration.
Yeah.
It would be the same development pattern. That's currently there across the street.
You're saying that the triangle property would develop the same.
That even less so because of I mean, the property being a triangle.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not gonna rectilinearly lay out as such as that, but from a density standpoint, that's what, you'd be looking at the same thing. And I think every lot in there is developed except for one. So,
And the lots that are to the north of the triangle are all wash,
yep.
non-buildable.
And that's when we talked about it early on. I thought that was inclusive of that, but those are separate parcels outside within the floodway.
Yeah. I think saw one of the owners trying to do something on that island in the wash.
Unfortunately, sometimes we're the last to know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll look at that and bring that back as well.
So anybody? See? No? Good?
See everybody a
We have
week
to have
from
a motion.
Saturday.
We don't need a motion.
Thank you, guys.